It's about time I recorded something in front of the camera again. Today I'm going to be reflecting on some of my favourite things that I've heard this year, starting with albums as they are the meat of what I review on this channel. I think music in 2018 has been really daring, surprisingly daring actually. It just seems that a lot of what you'll find that is daring kind of lies beneath the surface of what music communities tend to listen to. Regardless, I hope this video kind of shines the light on some of these things, and you can check them out because that's kind of what I like to do with these videos here. This is in no particular order. Obviously, these are my personal picks. I'd love to hear what you guys found this year that I may have missed. Starting off with Eden's Vertigo.
So please just hold on to me. This is nowhere we're not finished yet.
The Irish singer-songwriter had already been dropping indie-tronica EPs under the name The Eden Project, but this takes that acoustic-tinged electropop indie-tronica to the next level by being really daring, visceral, creative, glitchy. I've been coming back to it a lot. Secondly, we have the Remain in Light covers album from Angélique Kidjo.
Never seen anything like that before.
This is a reimagining of the Talking Heads' most celebrated and essential album, Remain in Light, but Angélique Kidjo returns it to its African funk roots and is something to behold in its own right. The wonder of the original Remain in Light came with how the Talking Heads and Brian Eno used these loops of bouncy, infectious, layered instrumentation, and so here Kidjo stays true to the enchanting quality of the original, but also breathes into David Byrne's once cryptic and eccentric lyrical passages a more human and spiritual life. It's a very new and fresh approach, but once you hear it, you're kind of wondering why no one kind of went for this concept in the first place. Very insightful as well. And number 3, the self-titled effort from Elysia Crampton, only 18 minutes, and it's already just one of the most mind-bending creative things I've heard this year. Elysia Crampton clashes together these angular sound effects that tessellate in really strange and freaky, hypnotic ways. It's the musical equivalent to bus seat patterns. At number 4, something really fun and liberating, but also very socially conscious. Janelle Monáe has always been known for giving classic R&B a very sleek, modern, even futuristic makeover. And over here, it's a window into sexuality, queerness, femininity, and racial injustice, but all given the veneer of a very harmonious, absolutely fun pop record. And there's a lot of Prince influence too, just so Princey. At number 5, Soil by Serpent with Feet, another great R&B release, but so much more experimental and cold and even devilish. It's R&B given this slow-growing, absolutely haunting gospel aura. But speaking of grit, I thought it would be cool if I could just chuck on a metal release. Decided that maybe I could put on Sleep's The Sciences. Their first album in over 15 years, but instead of going through the dreary and doomy stoner metal that they did on Dope Smoker, The Sciences is groove heavy and immediate, really just meaty guitar riffs buzzing in your ears as if they were weaponized. Then we have Pusha T with Daytona.
We can bet 100,000 with my safe hold. My numbers looking like a bank code. These are the games we play.
Not the first album out of Yeezy season that we'll see on this list. Pusha T just has this inherent power to his punchlines and his very assertive and cutting delivery. And there's also like a power to conciseness as well. This is only 7 tracks, and yet Daytona gives all that it's worth. There are some nasty lines on here. Nasty. Next up on the list is one of my early favorites for the year, Communion by Park Jiha. I'm now aware that this was technically a 2016 release, but, you know, I didn't really care. It got an international release in 2018. I kind of want to talk about it anyways. It's amazing how thick and immersive an atmosphere can feel despite there only really being one instrument playing. But with Korean classical instruments, Park Jiha is able to conjure up this somber world slowly being drawn to life, or like it's being painted as the album moves on. They are free-form pieces that will just grab you in and just lead you on whatever journey it feels like. At number 8, it's the tribute to black music, but also black women leaders. Sons of Kemet, Your Queen is a Reptile. At number 10, one of the most ridiculous concepts for a metal album I've heard, but it's unapologetic about that. It's not as cheesy as it sounds. Yes, it is a technical death metal album about slug warfare. Slugs in different kingdoms, at war with each other, catapulting salt at one another. It's surprisingly wordy, and it's surprisingly brutal. There are a lot of influences from different subgenres of metal, like black metal, thrash metal, progressive metal. It's really cool for what it is, and it's also just straight up pummeling. At number 11, another Yeezy season release, Kids See Ghosts. I can still feel the love.
Everybody want world peace, till your niece get shot in the dome piece. Then you go and buy your own piece, hoping it'll help you find your own peace.
This really short album shows Kanye West and Kid Cudi at the most charismatic they've been in years. In 2010 or 2011, Will Toledo released Twin Fantasy, a really lo-fi, fuzzy pop album. Didn't really click with me in the same way it did for a lot of other people, but you know. However, in 2018 right now, Will Toledo and his band Car Seat Headrest are signed to Matador Records, and it seems like they have the freedom to do what they want. So they kind of remade the album, cleaned up the sound, but in doing so they gave the songs like so much more punch and kick, and I kind of really like that. There's just a multitude of creative details and additions that I pick up more and more of as I continue to return to this album. But also with indie rock and indie pop, we have Carolyn Rose with Loner. Carolyn Rose is smart. She is deceptively smart. Although each song may initially smack of typical indie tomfoolery, her songwriting is hooky, her lyrics deal swiftly and snarkily with very nasty topics. But before you've had time to soak up the poignancy of one song, she's screaming very playfully on another. This is just a gem of a pop album this year, and not one to be missing. At number 14, Kimbra, Primal Heart. What else?
Come and take me long years back to where we're from. We could be together, that's where we belong.
The New Zealand pop sorcerer Kimbra has an imagination that ran pretty wild on her first two albums, but on Primal Heart that same sparkly eccentricity is given its catchiest form yet. It wasn't necessarily an immediate favourite, but the more I came back to it, the more I realised how well each song stands on its own as just a really great pop song. So no, this is not a consistent album by any means, but that matters so little when each separate part is just done so well. Kimbra is an icon. Pass it on. Next up, Ayanna Leigh with Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten. A few years ago, Ayanna Leigh was known as the very mystical and inconveniently named I Am I Who Am I. But now she's gone full on synthwave, and despite the length of this album being over an hour long, there isn't really a song here that doesn't sweep me up in its watery and aquatic atmosphere. Then at number 16, we're coming back here to New Zealand, Wax Chattels.
I think I'm allergic to everything I see. Clarifies everything that surrounds me.
They describe it as guitarless guitar music. So instead they resort to drums, synthesizers, and bass, and they pull it off so well in a barrage of different unique ways. Concrete is one of the best album openers I've heard all year, so there's that. Then a highlight for this year that was just so uniquely strange, Elza Soares with Deus e Mulher. At the age of 80 years old, the very accomplished and celebrated Brazilian singer, known for creating some great, and I mean great, samba soul music, is now fronting some of the nuttiest and most off-the-wall art rock with dance flavors from her home country. It's like she's flipping samba on its head. And here, it's like she's trying to create a dance punk record of sorts, and it works so well. At number 18, something a little more easygoing, just immediately blissful and beautiful, and just probably the best thing that this band have released in years, Beach House's 7. Then we have the new album from the Polish band Lonker See, One I See Red. They begin this album with what seems like a really tranquil and minimal jazz piece, but before you get too comfortable, they just blow it up into one of the coolest jazz rock albums of the year. It's meditative, but it's also overwhelming at the same time. So cool. At number 20, Superorganism with Superorganism.
Something for your mind.
무엇인가 정신을 집어넣으세요. 어떤 것 필요한가?
And it's not hugely substantial lyrics-wise, but it's not really trying to be. It's just trying to be just really fun, absurd pop music. And it makes up for its absurdity by just having a barrage of really fun and creative samples used in really inventive ways. And I think what really balances out all the sparkly and overwhelmingly absurd music of Superorganism is the front woman, with her very deadpan and quite funny vocal style. At number 21, just straight up a great technical death metal record with a whole bunch of progressive and jazzy elements that don't really deserve to work as well as they do, but they do. Number 22, Black Dresses with WasteIsolation, one of the best industrial and noise pop records of the year. The vocal style might take a little bit of time to get used to, but overall this album just vents frustration and adamant pleas to be treated without scrutiny and alienation from the viewpoint of a queer and more specifically trans individual. Black Dresses can really pull off the angst and the frustration just so well, and I think most of that is just because the production is just amazing on this thing, so pummeling and booming, like you just smashed a fist through the window. At number 23, one of the strangest band names, with one of the strangest album titles, with one of the strangest album covers, and some of the strangest music that you'll hear this year. Personnel from Australian experimental rock bands The Drones and High Tension come together for an album that you probably won't forget. It's angular, it's neurotic, it's angry, it's political. At number 24, Rollo Tomasi with Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It. I was actually researching this the other day and actually has an alternative title. It's also called Buffalo Staple, the album. This is monumental proof that you can take already established styles and sounds and create something that is still so rampant with inspiration. Rollo Tomasi bring earth-shattering energy with their approach to post-hardcore, but not before lulling you into a false sense of security with the first few tracks that kind of gleam and glisten with this blissful twinkle in its eye. So yeah, while this is a pummeling record, it's also quite a beautiful one too. But if you just want pummeling energy on its own, just aggression, pure aggression in thunderstorm form, then look no further than the half-hour-long album from Storm O. At number 26, Anna von Hausswolff with Dead Magic, a cursed display of all that Anna von Hausswolff ever had to offer. And my word, I was not disappointed with how powerfully fierce and thick the purgatorial atmosphere on here is. At number 27, Brett Naucke with The Mansion, a very tranquil yet mind-bending odyssey through digital space. Naucke's layering of synthesizers is interspersed with field recordings of faint clicking and insect chirps even. It's evocative in that each piece of the puzzle sounds like an electric current just traveling and circuiting through a wire loop in your skull. At number 28, La Iglesia Atómica with the Gran Muro de Coma. If this underground Puerto Rican band have truly been around since the early 90s, then their music must have been so ahead of its time. And even if it wasn't, right now they're bringing the flames back to stoner rock in a way that is scarily apocalyptic. At number 29, an astonishing album very much like none other that I've heard this year, Niño de Elche's Antología de Cante Flamenco Heterodoxo.
Ella te dará la vida.
For nearly 2 hours, Niño de Elche strains his dystopian and frankly terrifying exercises of traditional Spanish folk and dance styles, and more importantly, never loses me. He does sound like he loses his mind though. With the ghoulish and wispy currents of Disc 1 to the livelier, dancier, but no less unsettling Disc 2. In ways, it is like listening to a mixtape of flamenco songs written to reflect a post-apocalyptic landscape. In fact, the only reason that I haven't reviewed this yet is because I just don't know how to approach it. There's just so many different styles it covers, from rumba to pasodoble. It just blows my mind. What did blow my mind the most this year so far was the legendary live performance and collaboration between 3 composers and musicians and wizards of the electronic avant-garde, Alva Noto, Ryoji Ikeda, and Mika Venio, with the 2002 live recording that has finally been released this year. These guys construct monumental soundscapes out of very microscopic and raw noises. It's terrifying, but it's also fascinating in the way that it can construct these techno-esque rhythms out of these noises that sound like metal fingers tapping the inside of your skull. But it all builds up as the musicians just add a whole bunch of ambient drones and pockets of harsh noise to it, all building up to an ending, a finale that absolutely tears me apart. It all culminates in something so cold and calculated, but to great effect, and in fact it's very soul-crushing in its own unique and special way. And that has been a very hefty and lengthy list of my favourite albums that I've heard this year. But before I end the video, I want to talk about 30 of my favourite songs I've heard this year. I'm just going to speed through this, I'm not even going to play samples. Number 1, Logistics with Lotus Flower, beautiful drum and bass song. At number 2, Natalie Press with the extremely cute short court style. At number 3, Playboi Carti and Lil Uzi Vert with Shooter. At number 4, Sabo with Calligraphy. James Blake with a very unsettling If the Car Besides You Moves Ahead. Then the expansive and ambitious but glitchy Emerald Rush by John Hopkins. Then 3 really fun pop songs, starting off with one of the more off-the-wall ones that samples sneezing noises, Superorganism, Nobody Cares. Then the very whispery and adorable Like They Do on the TV by Kimbra. Then also the really catchy Stay Off My Mind by Swedish singer-songwriter Scott. A dose of Russian trap rap with Husky's new single, Cop Shot the Kid by Nas, with one of the most creative uses of a Slick Rick sample in the way that it builds up and kind of hangs in the background as a reminder of the chilling reality. The haunting Young Fathers song In My View, the catchy and somewhat existential crisis-esque Jeannie Becomes a Mom by Carolyn Rose, Learn How to Watch by Carnage featuring Mac Miller and Made in Tokyo, an amazing single from an absolutely horrible album. The slow-burning hardcore punk song Colossus by Idols, Built on Ashes by Zeal and Ardor, like a combination of black metal and gospel music. My favourite song from the new 9 Inch Nails album, Play the Goddamn Part, a show that Trent Reznor still has a lot of like musical adventure and ambition in him to just go full-on jazz, industrial rock. Bubbling by Anderson .Paak, Hopefulness by Courtney Barnett, Glass House by Screaming Females, and Mitski channels her inner Chelsea Wolfe with the single Geyser. Number 22, the tropical Frickstorm song You Let My Tires Down, one of the best openers of the year. The groovy Curious by The Voids, one of the best R&B songs, The One by Georgia Smith, also an amazing R&B album that I will be reviewing later this year. My favourite song from the new album by jazz trio Go Go Penguin called Raven. My favourite song from the new Aut that album, These Three Things. They're very desolate and dry post-punk song Catch It, Black Dresses, In My Mouth, Vor Anthem of the Year, Pink by Janelle Monáe, and I want to end off the list with Wax Chatels with Concrete. And that's it. We're done. Just enjoy music, I guess, for this year. Goodbye.